how do you distinguish between something that might be like a fleeting fad and a more meaningful, lasting trend?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much happening, right, in the food and nutrition world. So it can be kind of tricky and a little bit nuanced. So for something that is, I would say, a long-lasting trend, it's you look for something, a consumer behavior or pattern that is persisting. So something that is going on for a longer period of time. And a true trend is actually going to develop over time. It's not something that kind of happens overnight. And it really aligns with long-term shifts in society and our culture. Like, for example, gut health or sustainable eating. Those would be sort of trends, longer-term trends. A fad often lacks that sort of depth, and it's really, creating short-lived buzz. So, for example, just before Christmas, on TikTok, frozen popcorn was trending. And that's really something that's going to come and go. We know that that's going to be a passing thing.
Well, hey there. Welcome to Media Savvy, the podcast that gives you a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to get noticed by media and become the go-to expert that they keep coming back to. I'll be sitting down with successful writers, producers, and entrepreneurs to learn the tools and tactics they use to build their reputation and in turn boost their business. I'm your host, Taub-Dix, and I've been working with top-tier media outlets for more than 30 years, anywhere from traditional print publications to online and social platforms. And I'm sharing my nutrition guidance without gimmicks. But you don't have to be a dietitian for this podcast to speak to you. Through my one-to-one conversations, you'll learn how to build a strategy to get your name in the news and establish yourself as an authority in your field, no matter what the industry. With Media Savvy, I'm on a mission to inspire, motivate, and empower you to have the confidence and tools you need to shine in the spotlight. Are you ready? Let's get Media Savvy. Well, hi there. Welcome back to the Media Savvy podcast. I'm your host, Taub-Dix, and today we're diving into a topic that is always timely, and it is about the power of trends. Whether it's trends in nutrition or in media, this is something that always is. I just love food trends, especially. And I recently participated in U.S. News and World Report's Best Diet Survey, and I had the opportunity to talk about different diets and how they affect our perceptions and how they change our behaviors. And trends really guide things, really push things along, even some that are kind of out there. And who better to join us for this conversation today than Shannon Crocker? Shannon is a dietitian and truly a trends expert. She doesn't just observe trends, she harnesses them to create impactful communications and connections. Shannon is a food-loving registered dietitian and professional home economist with over 25 years of experience in nutrition communications. With an eye for nutrition trends and a consumer-friendly way of promoting them, she is sought after as an evidence-based strategist, nutrition content creator, and media spokesperson for health-focused food and farming clients. As co-founder of Spark Nutrition Communications, she helps dietitians and allied health professionals stay ahead of food and nutrition trends, offering practical strategies to leverage them effectively. Today, she's sharing how trends can elevate your media presence and how keeping your messages fresh and helping you stay ahead of the curve in this fast-changing world can really make a difference. So whether you're a dietitian or you're just looking to stand out or you're just curious about what's next in trends, this episode is packed with insights that you won't want to miss. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get started. Welcome to Media Savvy, Shannon.
Oh, thanks for having me, Bonnie. I'm really excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast, and I think we're going to have a great conversation today about trends.
I know we will. So tell me, why is watching trends so important for people, especially dietitians that are working in the media?
Well, staying on top of trends really helps to make sure that you remain relevant and credible. And when you're sharing nutrition-based advice around trending topics through whatever media outlet or channel you happen to be sharing that through, it really helps to elevate you as a thought leader, somebody who's, watching the trends, knows what's happening in the world. And keeping up with that and keeping up with new developments can really help to differentiate you as well when you go out to pitch stories to media. So It just shows your adaptability. It shows your expertise. So it's a really great way to position yourself. So for example, let's say you're planning to pitch a TV segment and you're doing it on the latest food and nutrition trend. You can use that as a fabulous hook. It can be something that really can grab the attention of that person who sees a dozen emails a day come across their desk. If you're doing something about trends, it can help you to stand out.
For sure, for sure. And we've done a lot of shows on this podcast, which I hope you have listened to too, about pitching to media. And I think that when you're pitching something about the latest trend, that's always something that's very attractive. But how do you distinguish between something that might be like a fleeting fad and a more meaningful, lasting trend?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much happening, right, in the food and nutrition world. So it can be kind of tricky and a little bit nuanced. So for something that is, I would say, a long lasting trend, you'd look for something, a consumer behavior or pattern that is persisting. So something that is going on for a longer period of time. And a true trend is actually going to develop over time. It's not something that kind of happens overnight. And it really aligns with long-term shifts in society and our culture. Like, for example, gut health or sustainable eating. Those would be sort of trends, longer-term trends. A fad often lacks that sort of depth, and it's really, creating short-lived buzz. So for example, just before Christmas, on TikTok, frozen popcorn was trending. And that's really something that's going to come and go. We know that that's going to be a passing thing. So generally speaking, sort of those more outrageous things tend to be more of a fad. And sometimes we talk about trending flavors. So right now, pistachio seems to be trending, right? As soon as I saw it on TikTok, or saw it, pistachio chia pudding. Now I can't stop seeing it. It's everywhere. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's just something on social media. But then I happened to go to a couple different coffee shops over the last week, and they had a variety of different pistachio flavored beverages. So, I know that that's a trending flavor right now, but I don't think that's going to be something that persists, into the next coming years, like, say, sustainable eating.
It's funny when I think about trends that I have been, stories I've been quoted in over the years, they're always in, very solid publications and very often coming like around from November till January, really hot time of year to talk about trends. But I think that because of social media, we see these more fads all throughout the year. Some of them pretty bizarre, some of them harmless, but it is so interesting how much social media has influenced the trend business.
Yeah, absolutely. It drives a lot of trends, especially in food and nutrition. I mean, there's so many viral recipes that come out of TikTok and then end up on Instagram, for example. So definitely is driving a lot of food and nutrition trends. And it will be really interesting to see in the United States, what happens with TikTok and how that might actually impact food and nutrition trends.
Yeah. I am one of those people that really wouldn't mind if all social media went away, but even though sometimes I do enjoy it, but I think that it will be so interesting to see. I think that, there's always going to be another way. Basically, that's it.
It's true. It's true. I think we just now, like, trends obviously have always been around in food and nutrition. It's just now people have more ready access to it with social media. So.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you use trends in your communications? Could you just share some of the examples how you use them, maybe with connecting with media or even just in terms of working with brands?
Yeah, well, I use trends as the foundation of all my communications, really. Like when I sit down to create a project, I stop and think about what's really going to grab attention, what's trending now, what's on top of mind for consumers, for producers, what's going to be that thing that's going to create that buzz for them. So, not only just in sort of media and media pitches, but also when creating social media campaigns, even things like recipes. Like when I'm creating recipes for clients, I'll stop and think about, okay, well, what foods are trending right now? What kinds of foods are trending right now? What's the season? What are we looking at? So I really use it as the basis for most of my communications. And I'll just give you a couple examples. So we just recently at Spark Nutrition Communications did an Agriculture Day campaign, and it included TV segments and social media posts that we were working with dietitians on. And even before that, the pen hit the paper and we started to craft messages, we sat down and we had a really great brainstorming session to think about what are the big issues right now? What's the big picture that's impacting most of the people that we want to try to reach? And so, here in Canada, food price is a big issue. I know it is in the States, but it's an even bigger issue in Canada, from what I understand. And so we sat down, we thought, okay, well, it's food price is an issue. Well, that's okay. But now we need another interesting food hook, right? So we thought about, well, what's trending at this time of the year? It happened to be winter. And so we thought about soups, because soups always spike up in the wintertime. So we created a whole campaign around budget-friendly, comforting soups. And it really helped to frame the all of the campaign, all of the communications. And it got us really good traction because we were focusing in on sort of hot topics in the day.
Wow. So I have a few questions to ask about that. So first of all, where did you get a lot of your information? Like, are you combing through Instagram, TikTok, all of those social media platforms to collect all this information of what is actually trending? Do you do a lot of that research yourself?
Yes. Yeah, we do. We actually we get our feet on the ground sort of thing. So yeah, we're looking at what's trending on social media. We look at various industry reports. We look at news items. We look at trend reports. We go to trade shows. Often I find is a fabulous place to really spot what the next big thing is, or what's trending, or what's really capturing people's attention. So yeah, we do look at all of those things. And all of them really help to inform any of our communications.
Yeah, that is interesting. I find trade shows to be, fascinating. And did you go to Fancy this year?
No, I didn't. But I know, you got to have some good running shoes on to hit that trade show floor.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I've done away with the heels years ago.
Yeah.
But it seemed like so much was about gut health this year, gut health, and so many more supplements and drinks that are basically like liquid supplements. It seemed like that was really taking over this year.
Huge. I mean, I wasn't at Fancy, but a recent trade show that I was at in the fall, we saw the same thing. So a lot of hydration is hot. And it's not just water, but it's functional beverages with added, like you said, like liquid supplements, maybe for mood, for example, for mood enhancement, or for sleep, or calming effects, or just optimal health in general. And gut health and prebiotic sodas were everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that I know is really, really hot now. Really hot.
It is.
And I think that it's a great option for someone who likes regular soda and is having this instead because it's less sugar and might have the extra benefits of being prebiotic or probiotic, whatever they are. But I think that in my opinion, I'm not someone who really likes soda or sugary drinks. So I'd rather get my pre and probiotics elsewhere. But I do see how this could be just like a quick, easy fix if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it's certainly they have the market that they're looking for, right? Like you and I might not be that market because we might prefer to get it from different Whole Foods, but they have great, splashy designed cans, great names, fun, poppy colors. Like they really are trying to appeal to a specific market that's looking for that. They're doing a great job of it.
They are doing a great job of it. They are really pretty, colorful cans. Yes. And yeah, I think it looks great. So who knows? But yes, we're seeing lots of them now.
Lots of them. And lots of protein everywhere too. Like protein in everything from candies to cookies to pancakes to like at the trade show floor, it's just like every other booth just about had something with protein in it.
For sure. Protein has always been the nutrient that wore a halo, almost as if it had no consequence. There are no consequences of eating too much. It has no calories. I mean, it is crazy, how much people just don't even think about how much protein they're eating, yet carbohydrate, which is so important for energy and sparing the proteins. It lets protein go on and do what it has to do. You need the carbs and healthy fat. Carbohydrates have always been like the bad boys, of the diet.
Yeah, it's true. Carbohydrate and fat, although fat's come around. So
fat's come back. Fat's come back. Yeah.
Maybe carbohydrate we have too one day.
I don't know. Maybe. Although I do think that this is the year of the bean.
Yes, it is.
In my opinion. And it's such a funny thing because sometimes when I would get quoted in stories about food trends, sometimes I'd kind of slip in something that I really wanted to happen. Like for example, I have given interviews where it's like, this is the year of the bean. I don't know if that's really true, but I really want that to happen. So, maybe it will. And beans to me are like the chameleon of food. They fit into so many different categories. You could call it a vegetable. You could call it protein. You could call it a carb. You could call it whatever you want to, but just eat it because it is the most underrated food in the store, my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And I think, from what we've seen on social media, they're calling dense bean salads. They're having a moment. So I think this might be the year of the bean, Bonnie.
I'm hoping. My fingers are crossed. I also used to sometimes sneak in that I hope that, smaller portion sizes are a trend, but I don't know. That never quite caught on.
Yeah.
The other question I had to ask you is that, so when you get these TV segments, is it you and your partner who are getting these TV segments? Are you working with other dietitians where they work with you and they're the ones who go on TV? How does that work?
Yeah, we do both ways, actually. So this campaign that I was talking about, the Canada's Agriculture Day campaign, we had contacts that we were pitching, but we also worked with dietitians who we knew had contacts at their TV stations, at their local stations. So they were able to do the pitching themselves. So we created the pitch for them, gave them everything that they needed. We created the recipe. We provided the photos. We provided B-roll. We provided an outline, possibly all the props you might need, all those sorts of things. And then we said, okay, yeah, it was a lot of work, but you know what? I think like we heard from our team of dietitians that they really valued that. It made their jobs that much easier. So, we were happy to do it, and it made sure that our messages, were consistent across Canada. So
incredible messages, which is really the other thing. So do you hire dietitians? Did they give you like a fee for all that you do? Because that whole food styling thing and creating sound bites that really sell, like that's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So we would have, in that campaign in particular and other campaigns we've worked in as well, we always have a budget so that we can work with, the food photographer or the dietitian or the stylist or whomever to actually go out and deliver that. So we would pay them from our budget to do that. Yeah.
Wow. And is it something that you're being paid for by a brand? Like would a brand hire you to help with getting those messages out?
Yes. Yeah. So that in particular was Canada's Agriculture Day, that group that organizes that group hired Spark Nutrition and Communications to then bring in a team of dietitians to work with us. We've done that fabulous. With other agencies as well. Yeah, it's great. We really enjoy that side of things. I mean, at Spark Nutrition Communications, Carol and I have been working in media for many years now. Like you said, I've been working for over 25 years. So we have lots of experience. And so, now we're happy to bring in other dietitians to go out and put them in front of the camera as well, right? We don't necessarily need to be in the limelight all the time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you're also taking care of a lot of things that are sometimes the most challenging for dietitians or anyone who wants to work with media, setting up the whole scene and making it look beautiful and attractive. And those sound bites, because I know that I have a media training class that I do, or one-to-one counseling, and it's creating those sound bites that sometimes is so hard for people because we have so much to say.
Exactly.
How do you say it in little short bites?
Exactly. Yeah. I think in one of the trainings that we do with dietitians around how to create recipe videos that rock, we talk about sound bites and we talk about creating key messages, because you're right. It can be tricky to take everything. We're as dietitians, we're overachievers, right? We want to give all the information. So it can be tricky to just give that concise bit that's going to be punchy and catch attention. So we do like to create that. And of course, the dietitians on our team are allowed to massage
elaborate
it into their own language, whatever feels comfortable for them, so that it sounds natural.
Yeah, for sure. That's the most important thing, because then you're coming across in a much more authentic way when it sounds like it's really coming from you as opposed to reading a script.
Exactly. Yeah.
So have you ever encountered a trend that you found to be problematic or misleading from a nutrition perspective? Like, how do you approach addressing something like that? Like, do you address the trend and say, this is why it may not be that safe? Have you ever had any experiences like that? Or do you pretty much just talk about trends that are more positive and helpful?
Oh, that's a great question, because right now I think there's so many trends that are either misleading or negative, or there's a bit of a double-edged sword to them as well. So there's some positive stuff and some negative stuff happening. I think, just for example, right now, raw milk, avoiding seed oils, those are just really, trends that seem to be popping up out there that definitely have some negativity around them and lots of misinformation around them. And so, my approach has always been, Bonnie, to lean into the positive more than bringing out the negative. But, I know that everybody has their own approach and different things work differently for different people. So, sharing information proactively is more of what I do versus sort of getting down and dirty and shaming specific people who are sharing that misinformation.
Yeah.
Although I see lots of people doing that. And I think, there's probably a role for people to, obviously there's so much misinformation we need to debunk, I think. I find that clearing up facts versus myths on TV segments, for example. So I just did a segment where I was talking about ultra processed foods. I was talking about reading labels, and if you can't pronounce it, you don't eat it. And fruit has too much sugar. So I was addressing some pretty big myths that have been around for quite a while, really. Those are trends that just don't seem to be going away. Those myths. And what I did was I did a fun little segment where I did sort of like a true, false, fact, myth with the TV host to sort of, say, okay, well, this is out there. And this is what you might be hearing, but here's the truth. And so I use that approach sometimes, or sometimes I just proactively share the information. And on occasion, I will put up like, okay, you might have seen this. It's not true. Here's what you need to know. But more often, I sort of take that proactive approach.
That's what I mean about your work being evergreen, because I think that a lot of people feel like trends are just talked about, as I said before, November through January, but it really is not true. And you mentioned some of the things that I love to talk about, because in my book, Read It Before You Eat It, it's really all about shopping for the healthiest food in the store and what's on food labels. But some of the trends, only shop the perimeter of the store. So not true, make the most of the middle. And what about, don't eat anything or buy anything that has more than 5 ingredients? Absolutely not. If the ingredients are good, then why shouldn't there be more than 5? So all of that stuff, I call it nutrition myth information, and, really debunking those myths.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important. And there's so much misinformation out there right now. And I think it's only going to get worse in the next few years. And I think dietitians have a huge role to help to bust that myth, all those myths. And so that's why keeping on top of trends is really important, because if you're on top of what information is out there, it can help you to make so that you can create relevant content and know what you should be even busting, what myths you should be busting.
Exactly. And what would be better.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. So what do you think are a few of the top trends for 2025? What should be on our radar?
This is a tough one because there's so many, right? In food and nutrition, it's really hard. Like when we were developing our top 10 trends report for Spark Nutrition Communications, we had a big webinar just a couple of weeks ago. It was really hard to whittle it down to 10. So to say, just a few is even more difficult. But I think, probably some that are most relevant for dietitians that, we've been seeing in the last year. One of my favorites that I'm excited about, and maybe it's just personally, I don't know, is menopause. It's finally gaining some traction and it's going mainstream. We're hearing about it everywhere, with new services, new food products being marketed to women with menopause, supplements, and for better or for worse. There's a lot of information out there about menopause right now. And I think there's a great opportunity for dietitians because nutrition plays a huge role in optimal well-being during menopause. So I think that's a good one. Fiber, I think it's finally going beyond constipation. People are thinking about, that's gut health and overall health. It's not just for digestion. It can be for your heart health, your brain health, your skin health. Like people are really starting to notice fiber a little bit more. I don't think it's going to take over for protein, but it's definitely starting to get some traction. We talked about prebiotic sodas, for example. So I think that fiber is starting to show up a little bit more this year. And I think another one that's really interesting is personalized nutrition powered by AI. So we're watching this one really closely. I think there's a lot of innovations happening in this space. And I think there's a huge opportunity there's a bit of a threat for dietitians because, some of these things like personalized coaches online that are actually just AI are starting to, get a little more traction. But also there's opportunity there because there's so much tech and so much personalized information. Dietitians can get into that, and really help consumers, help their clients and communities to navigate all of those choices, and help them figure out, what tech and what AI can be helpful and what's not. But I think there's a great
Exactly.
opportunity to leverage that trend.
Yeah, and it's talk about personalization. There's nothing like being personal with someone, giving them advice when they're right in front of you.
Yeah.
So that makes a huge difference. But you mentioned menopause, and I think it was 2 episodes ago I had on Hillary Wright and Liz Ward.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that episode. They're fabulous. That was a great one.
Yeah, they're so much fun. They're so much
Mm,
fun, but it is true that menopause is having its day.
it is.
And really, and I think that it's also important because it doesn't mean that you have to be in menopause to really pay attention to that, because perimenopause, it's right around the corner, and
Yeah.
it really encompasses such a large group of people, and men also, because they have to learn about what women are
Hmm.
going through. So I
Yeah.
just think that it's something so important. I'm really glad that that caught on. And AI is, amazing and scary at the same time, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you know. So do you think that there's a trend that has potential to really be here long term? Because I think that what we're seeing, I know that when it came to evaluating the diets, obviously the Mediterranean diet is something that I think is here to stay. But I don't
Yeah.
really think that, even though we've been talking about this for years, I still don't think that people really understand that it is not a diet. It's not a plan. If I had to write a
Hmm.
Mediterranean diet, with an allowed and avoid list, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
So I think that people don't understand that. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a few things right now that have the potential to sort of shift how we think about food and nutrition. I think longevity is one of them. I think people are starting to focus on health span a lot more, and not just seniors, not just people in their 50s or 60s. This is something that we're starting to see younger people pay attention to as well. They're seeing their parents' age or their grandparents' age, and they're starting to think now more proactively about optimal health and food and functional foods to help them with that. So I see that sort of optimal aging. I see that's something that's kind of, I see that has long-term potential. I'm also really watching very closely the GLP-1 meds.
Mm.
The trend isn't the same in Canada yet as it is in the United States, but I think it has the potential to impact the food environment, the foods that we see in the grocery store, as well as consumer habits, eating habits, and it's changing how we talk about weight loss and obesity for the first time, I think, in a long time. So I'm watching that really closely, and I'm to see how that might potentially change that conversation about weight and about eating, and possibly change habits. I don't know. It's there's got to, we need more research in that area, but I think it has potential to have some big shifts, big impacts.
You just made me think about something that I hadn't really thought about, but it used to be that when we would talk about trends, it would be like, what's the flavor of the year? What's the color of the year? What's the
Yeah.
fruit of the year? What's the vegetable of the year? And there would always be something like that. What you are talking about now is something that's much bigger than that. It's not like a one-off type of thing. Talking about menopause, talking about what these GLP-1 drugs are doing and what the potential is for the future. I mean, the longevity, these are big topics
Yeah.
that really affect everyone. It's not just adding kale to your salad and wow, you're trendy and you're going to be healthy for
Yeah.
the rest of the year. These are much more, they're wider range topics that cover really information for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And we call those like macro or mega trends, right? They're sort of the umbrellas. And then I think underneath of those will be different trends that, have little offshoots from there. So for example, in menopause, people are now talking more about, say, protein, for example, or fiber because your digestion changes, or soy foods because there may be potential there to help modulate, hot flashes, for example,
Mm-hmm.
bone health. So I think all of those big macro trends, part of the reason why they have such impact is because there's so many little offshoots that come out of them, and so much potential for nutrition and for health. And that focus, there's never before, I don't think, Bonnie, and I'm not sure, I'd be interested to see what you think too on this. I don't think there's ever before been such a focus on health and wellness and looking to food beyond just, sort of basic nutrition.
Yeah, well, I think that this whole, we could call it a trend, but I don't think it is, food as medicine umbrella. I think that there's so much that goes under that. But you know what we haven't been hearing as much about, which I think that I just wish that we would talk more about it, is the family coming together at the table. And a few years ago, that was really a pretty hot topic. And I heard a lot of people talking about it. I remember writing articles about it and doing interviews on that. But I think that has so much to do with a lot of the ailments that we're facing today. Studies have shown that when the family comes together at the table, that kids eat more vegetables, that there's less drug abuse, there's less smoking, there's less of this and that, and, more of other things that are more positive. But we haven't really been talking about that much. I think that maybe there needs to be a resurgence of that.
That's an interesting point, because I do recall that as well. We talked about that quite a lot. I think it was, a theme for Nutrition Month at one point. I think, one of the things that we're seeing this year is another trend. And I'm not sure if you're seeing this in the States, but we're seeing this a little bit more in Canada, is cooking more at home, because eating out at restaurants has become so expensive. So maybe there's more opportunity there to be talking about that connection and beyond sort of, so you're going to save money if you cook at home, obviously. And yes, you're going to be able to eat, hopefully, more nutritious foods because you're able to control what's going into your food, et cetera. But also maybe there's a role to bring back in that connection piece, which you're right, is so important.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know that I did lots of stories on that during COVID, because we were all stuck at home more and trying to cook more. And I think that was like the big, wake up call that so many people are afraid to cook at home. They're afraid that they don't have the skills, or they don't know what to throw together. And, it's something that I think is also another one of those evergreen trends, that I think we need to start talking about more.
Yeah, you know what? And I think dietitians, we're primed, right? Like, people eat food, not nutrients. So we are in a great position to teach people how to get that good nutrition into practice in the kitchen. So whether that be, in-person cooking classes or one-on-one classes, or, we talk a lot about recipe videos, because I really think that it's a great venue, a great way to get people to be able to put your advice into action, right? Is showing them how to cook and getting them excited about cooking. So that means we've got to share really great recipes that are not only healthy, but also really tasty. Like, we can never forget taste. That's got to be the bottom line.
For sure. And also very simple, easy to prepare. And as you mentioned, budget friendly. And I know for me, since my kids were little, they were always in the kitchen with me. And now they are grown. And I love to see that they cook for their families. They loved it. They still call me sometimes from the supermarket, what's better, this or this? And they'll send me pictures of labels. I just got a few of those this morning. But
that's great.
But I spent this weekend, my granddaughter came to stay over this weekend, and my grandson, and they love to cook with me. They make requests. Can we make they come, my grandson comes over with a recipe book. Hey, can we make this weekend? I do modify those recipes though, but it is really wonderful. Oh, for sure. I said, we don't need this. We could add this instead. But I think that, along the lines of what we're talking about, is this is something that really can start with children at a very young age, because you'd be surprised at how you encourage kids to literally play with their food and learn about food and not be afraid to touch it and do things with it and create these dishes, even if it means growing a plant, watering a basil plant and using basil in your salad. That kind of stuff has such an impact.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it does. Absolutely. And I think, maybe with people who are doing more focus on baby-led weaning, maybe people will be starting to bring their kids into the kitchen and do more of that. I've seen some amazing dietitians who are really focusing in on young children and new moms, and really trying to encourage that. So I'm hopeful that, people will get back to that, because I think you're right. It has such a huge potential to impact not just, how you cook, but your health for the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. And even how
Yeah,
you relate to each other. I think that the
true.
connection of food it makes such a great topic to talk about. It never gets old in our house.
Yeah, it's
Never.
true. It brings joy, like such joy.
It really does. It really
Yeah.
does. So I have really enjoyed talking to you today about these trends. It actually went far beyond what I was even thinking we would talk about. And I have two questions that I like to ask all my guests. One of them is if you had a chance to send a message to your younger self, what would that be?
Okay, well, I have to tell you, Bonnie, I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Oh, recovering,
Perfectionism, yeah,
eh?
recovering. Perfectionism and fear of making mistakes, I think, really held me back a few times in my career in a few instances. And so, I would definitely tell my early career self to let go of perfectionism and lean into opportunities that even if you think you might not be the best at it, or maybe you might make a mistake slightly outside of your comfort zone, just really lean in because that's where the opportunities come from.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a problem
It's
in
a
our
tough one.
profession for sure. I think, I tell people all the time, when people ask me about that question, perfectionism, I still remember being my first day of my undergraduate degree. And the dean came in and told us basically in the room of 75 people, you know, many of these people won't be here after this. And these are your competition because you have to get an internship. And at that time, I didn't even know what an internship was. And I remember looking around thinking, but like, I thought these were supposed to be my peers, my colleagues, right? Yeah. So that for me started day one. So I've been working on it, like I said, recovering perfectionist for a long time.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one, but I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're recovering.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Maybe by the next time you're on my show, you'll be 100% there.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm working on it.
Okay. I like that goal. And another question that I have is what is one piece of realistic advice that you could give to someone who wants to be a trend watching pro? What is something that you do that you think is probably one of the most important things that you do?
Yeah, I think it's really important to stay curious and with that build a system because watching trends can be overwhelming. I mean, you could be days just going down the rabbit hole on one particular trend. So don't try to do it all. Set up a system in place, a time when you're going to review those trends so you don't spend your whole day doing it. And I think then, when you take those trends, you review them, that would be one. And then most importantly, connect the dots and look at the bigger picture.
I would think it would actually be difficult if you're looking on, let's say, TikTok or Instagram for trends, unless you're doing like literally hashtag trends. It is so easy to get caught up in all of a sudden looking at other shiny objects on there and then
Yes.
get lost.
How many different cucumber salads can I look for?
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
true.
I like that one. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for being on our show today. I love chatting with you. Can you tell our audience where they could find you?
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, you can find me at shannoncrocker.rd, and you can find Spark Nutrition Communications on Instagram at SparkRDs. And you can check our website out at sparknutritioncommunications.com.
That's awesome. Thank you. And all of this will be in the show notes anyway, and links to every place you could find Shannon, even though it's not that easy to hide these days.
That's true.
Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap on today's episode of Media Savvy. A huge thanks to you, Shannon, for showing us how and why you might want to be a trend tracker, especially if you want to land a story in media, which, media loves trend stories. So friends, if today's conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll subscribe to the show, leave a quick review, and why not share this episode with someone who would like to hear it. This is Bonnie reminding you that you don't need years of experience to make a meaningful impact. This show is for anyone ready to connect with media and be media. So let's connect on Instagram at BTD Media. And I'd love to hear your burning questions. I'd love to hear about your biggest wins. And by the way, you are looking mighty media savvy today. So keep it up and we'll talk soon. Till next time.